I always dreamed that I would see pastoral landscapes with just hemp as far as I can see. But then you also have this reality of solar there as well too, that kind of dots the landscape. I feel like seeing them kind of in concert, like as I'm imagining what rural landscapes could be in the future, that really inspires me.
That's Owen Deitcher, recent Cornell graduate and fellow traveler on the highway to hemp. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to talk to Owen about his trip around the country, where he's been, who he's met, and where he's headed next. He's doing a 6-week road trip this summer around America to, connect the dots as one does here in the hemp industry. He's also interested in agrovoltaics, which is, solar panels on farms. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation about all kinds of things. And also, after the interview with Owen, we're going to hear a few short interviews with some folks who were at the Pennsylvania Industrial Hemp engine launch last week in Hazleton. I was able to talk to the head of the National Science Foundation, a U.S. congressman, and Pennsylvania's Secretary of Agriculture. So be sure to stick around for that after my conversation with Owen. All right, next we're going to do this, I guess, sort of something new. This is a combination sponsor message, news nuggets, and hemp event calendar segment. All right, so if you are tempted to skip this, don't do it, because there's some vital information here for you that you might be able to use. All right, so our show today, as always, is sponsored by IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana. And there's some news coming out of Fort Benton today. IND Hemp just announced the completion of its state-of-the-art cleaning facility and processing expansion. They've doubled the storage capacity at their oilseed facility in Fort Benton. These significant upgrades not only support domestic customers, but also open doors to lucrative export opportunities in neighboring Canada, as well as Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the Pacific Rim. So check out IND Hemp. Go to indhemp.com and feel free to send them a message and say, hey, I heard about you on the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Our show is also sponsored this week by King's Agri-Seeds. From forage crops to cover crops to industrial hemp, King's Agri-Seeds can help you maximize your farming operation. They are located here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and they've been helping farmers for over 25 years. And I want to let you know about their upcoming Field Days, a 2-day event August 15th and 16th at their research farm in Christiana, Pennsylvania. That's here in Lancaster County. You'll see new varieties, you'll get cultivation tips, you'll meet committed people in the hemp industry from across the supply chain, breeders, farmers, decorticators, product manufacturers, and maybe even some equipment folks. So you can send an email to Sarah Mitchell, that's smitchell@kingsagriseeds.com. Let her know that you'll be coming to the event, and make sure you tell her that you heard about it here on the podcast. And while you're in town for King's Agri-Seeds event, you can also just make a short drive over to the Penn State Extension Research Farm. It's the Southeast Research and Extension Center in Manheim, Pennsylvania. August 15th in the evening, I think it starts around 7. It's their annual hemp research field walk, policy update, and networking event. Right, this is an informal field walk for farmers, marketers, industry representatives, and others interested in the potential for growing hemp and processing here in the state. I'll have links to these events on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. I would like to tell you about another upcoming event. This one is in South Dakota. August 3rd through August 5th, it's hosted by Horizon Hemp Seeds and Complete Hemp Processing. This is an educational conference plus a 2-day hempcrete workshop and a tour of the new processing facility. And a lot of your favorite hemp people will be there, including Corbett Hefner, Mandy Kerr, Morris Beagle, Lori Daitner from here in Pennsylvania, Ray Catterley, he's going to be running the hempcrete workshop. There's going to be a whole lot of hemp activity there in South Dakota. I will have a link to that event on the show page for this episode. And before we get into the conversation with Owen, I do want to give a shout out to Cameron McIntosh at Amerishon Cast Hemp. I spent the day with him yesterday up at his shop in Bartow, Pennsylvania, putting the finishing touches, most of the finishing touches, on the hempcrete acoustic panels that we're making for our podcast studio here at the Lancaster Farming offices in Ephrata. I mentioned these panels before. They are 2 foot by 4 foot, cast in place hempcrete. We added some milk paint pigment to it, and I've created what looks to be a 3-dimensional landscape. You can see pictures of it on our Instagram feed or on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. And a big shout out to Greg Wilson at HempWood, who supplied the HempWood boards for the framing. So you'll see what I mean when you see the photos. So thanks, Greg. Oh, wait, we've got a message from Greg here.
Hey, it's Greg Wilson from HempWood in Murray, Kentucky. We support the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp podcast, and you can check us out at hempwood.com. Have a great day.
All right, so there you go. You got your sponsor messages, your news nuggets, your calendar items, and a personalized greeting from Greg Wilson. What more could you want? I want to just take a second to express my sincere gratitude to our sponsors for their continued support, and to you, our listening audience, for your continued listening. I could not be doing any of this without all of you, so thank you. I will put the links to our sponsors and to those hemp events on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, Herlock, are you done jibber-jabbering? Are we ready to talk to Owen? Yes, I think we are. Owen Deitcher, grad student at Cornell and fellow hemp road tripper. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing very, very well. Reporting live from Boulder, Colorado right now. I'm so excited to come on your podcast, Eric, and excited to talk about it.
Cool. All right, so you're in Boulder. You've been on the road for how many weeks now?
2.5, almost 3 weeks now.
Okay, now is this halfway through, or how much time do you have left on the road?
So it's about 6-week road trip, and so I'm kind of approaching that middle point right now, or halfway point, and so this is kind of where I start to kind of make my upward swing through the upper Midwest and kind of around the United States. But I'm swung through the Southeast and then kind of Texas and then kind of up through to Colorado right now. So
cool. We'll get into talking about some of the stops you've made a little later in the conversation. But what is like your main sort of mission or goal? What, like, sort of give me like the high level, synopsis of why you're making this trip.
Reason why I wanted to do this trip is I think a lot of times in the hemp industry, we have sometimes maybe a little bit of a separation from kind of what we see as like some of the hemp end products, but we don't really know what goes on in kind of the kind of production and then processing side. And so kind of on my road trip, I'm focused on really trying to figure out these stories and understand what are the biggest players and kind of biggest names really in the industrial hemp sector, and really trying to shake farmers' hands and really engage with them, because I haven't really had a lot of engagement throughout my life with farmers. And this trip has kind of really exposed some of the issues going on in the agricultural sector at large, but really kind of focused in on, like, for the industrial hemp sector, what are the kind of main challenges ahead and how we can kind of create connections within the industry to kind of build up the industry as a whole. So
yeah, I mean, obviously farmers are so important to this industry. Without farmers, we have essentially nothing. But also your role as sort of a gatherer of stories, as a storyteller, is also very important. I think we share similar roles in that way. And so you'll take this information that you get and you'll go back to Cornell in the fall. You're a grad student there. And I don't know, I mean, tell me about the program you're in and how, the information you're gathering will inform your studies back east.
Yeah, so I actually graduated Cornell in May.
Okay.
And so I Yeah. And so this is kind of an in-between time right now between, when I graduated and the start of my job in mid-August. And that 2.5 month kind of segment has allowed me to kind of take this time to explore, travel the country. But really what I'm trying to take away from like these visits, I'm kind of documenting all of them through videos, photos, and then some audio as well too, kind of interviewing some of the people and the processing and farms, is be able to take this information, this data, and then really kind of start to create some videos, that I'll kind of produce and start putting on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. Really just trying to give some free kind of publicity and exposure to a lot of the really big players in the industry. And in my mind, really try to elevate those voices that have really kind of made a really big impact on me being in the industrial hemp kind of industry, or just really as an observer. And so I'm just going around and documenting all this, and then kind of get post these long form videos at the end of the trip, or as I'm kind of road tripping right now. It's a little bit difficult to kind of edit and kind of produce videos on the road, but I'm going to try to do my best to pump out some videos. And then over the course of the fall, create these videos. And then I'm hopeful in early November, I'm going to try to put together some form of like a documentary, to be able to kind of have an event and maybe showcase that documentary to people, in the Philadelphia area, and people that want to visit as well too. So
Cool. Okay. You're based in the Philly area?
yeah, I'm from the Philadelphia area, but I'm going to be living in Ithaca for additional year, after graduation. So I'm going to be working remotely from there.
Okay.
And so I kind of, as I am based in Ithaca, but I kind of see myself as like, well, still having those roots and ties to Philadelphia as well. So
Awesome. Yeah. I understand that because I also have those same roots to Philadelphia. So you mentioned you're going to be starting a job in August. Tell me about what this job is going to be.
yeah, so I am going to be working for a community solar developer, and working as a development associate. So development associates, or just development kind of team on any solar company or renewable energy company, are kind of people that permit projects and kind of have the relationships with the landowners to be able to kind of push the projects towards construction. And then that's when you hand it over. And so company I'm working for, they are a focus in kind of agrivoltaics. When agrivoltaics is the combination of agriculture and solar in the same plot of land. And so whether that's grazing or intercrops, so crops underneath the solar panel, or even just pollinators, there are a multitude of ways to be able to kind of increase the productivity of the land rather than just having agriculture or just solar panels on that land. And so that combination, I think for me, is really appealing about this company. And so I'm really excited to be able to work for them starting in mid-August. So
Awesome. So that begs the question, what does that have to do with industrial hemp?
yeah. And so, maybe going back to the question about kind of what my studies and how this kind of relates. When I went to Cornell for graduate school, and I came in as I got my degree in master's in regional planning. And so if you think about the kind of focus, of like regional planning, it's not focused on the city. It's taking into account larger areas, and in fact, really a focus on rural areas in my kind of viewpoint, and seeing the kind of interaction of people in space. And I really think that solar energy, or just kind of solar power, and interaction in rural spaces, is something that really got me engaged. Something that is not really talked about, because a lot of projects in rural areas, a lot of solar developers think that, you just plop down a bunch of solar panels and people are just going to be fine. Landowners are going to get paid for being able to use their land. But there's a kind of deeper interaction between when you take out agricultural land from production and put solar panels on, what that does to kind of town dynamics, kind of neighbor relations as well too. And so I was really interested in kind of exploring the side of the farmer, the landowners, in rural areas, and how they are affected by solar energy development. And I did an internship last summer at a solar company and kind of explored these kind of community engagement themes a little bit more. But I was kind of starting to become a lot more focused on what is the agricultural sector kind of facing in terms of like pressures, challenges. And I think in the industrial hemp sector, those kind of issues are ever present. Being able to kind of, if you are competing with corn and soy, what are those kind of pressures for a farm from an agronomics standpoint? Be able to kind of start planting hemp rather than soy or corn. What kind of is the productivity or the economics of the finances that kind of come with that? I think I was really fascinated when I started talking with people in the industrial hemp sector. It's more at a higher level and just understanding kind of what are the end uses and kind of the industry at large. But as I kind of got more interested in the agricultural side, I really wanted to hear more about the farmer's perspective. And as a result, I kind of started interviewing farmers over the course of last year. Yeah, it resulted in kind of my exit project being about hemp. So
That's cool. So you weren't really like in the hemp program at Cornell, or you were?
I was not, but I kind of think of myself and um, I kind of consider myself an honorary member of sorts because I was taking classes there, engaging with some of the professors in the hemp program. Um, and as a result, I kind of built these connections, when we'd have speakers come and kind of hearing about what's going on in the sector and then seeing some of the research. I really felt like I was a part of that program, even though I was getting a master's in regional planning. I was able to really take classes outside of my department, and that's the kind of beauty of the Cornell degree. The reason why I really took it in the first place was because I was wanting flexibility in my education. I went to a liberal arts school for my undergrad, and Cornell is basically just a larger liberal arts school with a lot more resources, a lot more departments. And the agricultural or the ag school there, CALS, is one of the best in the country. And be able to take classes there, I think, was one of the biggest pleasures and greatest opportunities for me to be able to extract some type of different skill set rather than just city planning or regional planning. I was able to get solar. I was able to get industrial hemp, take a couple of business classes, but I feel like a more well-rounded student. And well, I'm not a student anymore, but more well-rounded kind of professional now.
A student of life.
Yeah, I know. I can't call myself a student anymore. It's a little bit sad, but I feel like I'm coming into the solar industry with a fresh set of eyes too, because I've been building all these experiences, kind of going into these rural areas and being able to talk with farmers and understand what their issues are. That when I do kind of reach out to these landowners and build these relationships, I'm not just some boy from the suburbs of Philadelphia trying to interact with them. I actually do have some, basis or kind of way in which I can kind of engage with them that's a little bit more genuine. So
Cool. Right on. Talk about one or some of the hemp classes that you took at Cornell.
Yeah, so I took a hemp production course at Cornell. It's taught by Dr. Heather Grab, amazing woman, fantastic person in the hemp program at Cornell. And we were put into groups and had to come up with a hypothetical farm plan. And so I got two people, one of which was in the hemp program, another one which was in the kind of controlled environmental ag program. Both kind of 1 year degrees at Cornell. And we kind of came up with a farm plan that looked into creating a hypothetical farm in West Virginia that we were harvesting a dual crop for grain and fiber to be able to use in biodiesel. So biodiesel would use the grain because it has a high fat content. And then also for bioethanol using the kind of hemp fiber and hemp stalks, be able to create bioethanol. And so we came up with like, what are the kind of inputs, what are the costs associated with this farm in terms of acquiring land, equipment, and then coming up with that farm plan and then presenting it at the end of the semester. And it was really great. I've never really kind of gotten to the nitty gritty details of like coming up with that. And so it really kind of put me in a different perspective and something that I actually really appreciate now, kind of going into the hemp sector, understanding kind of the dual use crop and what are the kind of economics surrounding it. So.
Right. And also to see like what farmers have to do to have a successful operation.
It's much easier when you're coming up with a hypothetical farm plan rather than executing it yourself. And so I actually have an even greater appreciation for seeing, managing even like 500-600 acres and mowing that, or like harvesting all of that, be able to process dry and then send it to the kind of like refineries to be able to create that biodiesel and bioethanol. it's a lot of steps and a lot of work. And yeah, I grew a greater appreciation. So that was in the fall. I also took like a cannabis history class as well too, kind of understanding different parts of the plant, the history of it. It was a little bit focused. We had focuses on cannabinoids, and then also some kind of industrial applications as well too. So
Okay.
that was really great.
Who teaches that class?
That class is taught by Dr. Carlin Buckler. She's the head of the hemp science program at Cornell. And then, yeah, I was able to audit a hemp processing class in the spring. That was I just didn't have availability in my schedule, but it was a really great class to be able to kind of understand some of the processing side and kind of difficulties that come with that. So,
Right on. And auditing a class is when you just sort of show up and you learn, but you're not actually enrolled in the class.
yeah, I was able to just like go on Zoom for a lot of them because I had a class that ended like while the hemp processing class was going on.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was able to kind of take that. So,
Well, that's cool. All right. So you set out on your road trip from New York, from Ithaca?
I started off from like Philadelphia and set off to kind of, I would say the start of my road trip really was Washington, D.C., because I go there pretty frequently. That doesn't really feel like a part of the road trip, but I kind of see it as like my sending off point. So yeah, I would say
Okay.
DC is kind of where I really began my road trip. So
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the highlights. Who did you visit?
started went to first one I went to was HempWood in Murray,
Oh,
Kentucky,
yeah. Yep.
Greg, and was able to see their whole operation and kind of took me around for the whole day and was just showing me all the different aspects of their processing facility. And I just was blown away just by the quality of their hemp wood. And yeah, it was just like it was the first visit too, and so still trying to kind of figure out some of the kind of ways in which I was capturing it. But I was able to kind of see some of his fields as well too, and the soil that they have there in Kentucky, and that part of Kentucky in particular, is incredible for growing hemp. And so some of their hemp plants were incredibly tall, like all the way up to kind of like my shoulder height, and I'm a pretty tall man, so it was just a very interesting way to be able to see when you go to other locations, kind of comparing the different heights and obviously different growing conditions that are kind of in those locations as well.
Nice. Yeah, Greg Wilson, he's awesome. That was actually our first stop on our road trip 2 years ago. We tried to make other stops, but we had some tire issues, whatever. But yeah, HempWood was our first official stop on the tour, and he's just very hospitable, very warm, open. He was like, "Come on in," you know. So yeah, cool. All right. So you went to HempWood, and then where'd you go from there?
And I was in Asheville, and so I met up with Drew Kitt and just talking to him about some of his work in the hemp industry and kind of learning a little bit about the cannabinoid side as well too, because I know he's kind of focused on cannabinoids and also kind of on the other aspects of the kind of hemp plant. And so that was a great visit. It wasn't at like a facility; it was just at a coffee shop, just being up with him. Um, and then I swung through the southeast, visited a couple of not hemp farms, but just like kind of cool farms. At one White Oak Pastures in Bluffton, Georgia, which is kind of a regenerative ag farm. Um, and then the next stop I was at was E3 Agricultural with Lucas Evans. I was in Austin for a couple of days, and they were having a workshop on nature-based solutions. And so it was kind of first day was focused on farmers and being able to kind of show like they had a lot of the farmers that grew hemp for Lucas in E3 come there, but also some potential farmers that were interested, kind of learn a little bit more about growing hemp. And then the following 2 days was kind of a hemp building workshop that we were able to hempcrete building workshop. So we were able to mix the hempcrete, be able to kind of like see the different textures and kind of herd size and how that affects, be able to kind of tamp it down because we weren't spray casting it. We were just doing the hand mix. Well, we weren't hand mixing the entire thing, but we did a little bit of hand mixing, but then the kind of tamping down with kind of wood planks to build like an outhouse, an outdoor shower for the facility there. So
That's cool.
yeah.
All right. So that's Texas. And then where'd you go from Texas?
And then I drove up to Kansas and visited South Bend Industrial Hemp with Melissa Nelson, and it was just a really fantastic visit. They just took me around. I was seeing some of their fields and then also just seeing their herd quality as well too. Because from what I've been hearing in the hemp industry, they have some of the best building grade herd quality, and to be able to see that, see how pure it was and how precise, especially how you know how regimented and identical a lot of the herd size was to be able to create the spray cast material in particular, because I know that's like a big issue and have low dust content. It was fascinating. And then I got to sit in like a combine with with Aaron for about 2 hours, just harvesting hay and just talking with him. And honestly, I was telling him at the end of the trip, I was like, "This is the best field trip I've ever been on. I get to sit on like a combine and just harvest hay for about like 2 hours." And so we were just talking about the hemp industry and just other kind of agricultural issues going on. And yeah, that was just one of those visits too where it was a focus on hemp in the beginning, but then at the end it was just like just sitting on a combine harvest and hay and just talking about agricultural, um, what's going on in the agricultural sector, kind of growing up in kind of a rural kind of like farming town, something that I really never really had exposure to. So I was really interested to kind of hear that.
Nice. That's Aaron Baldwin. Um, and so it's the Baldwin family farm, and I was there a couple years ago, and they've got, like it's 1,500 acres, bunch of different crops, but they've focused on hemp in the past couple of years. And it's like they've created, like what we're always talking about, like the local economy. Like they're setting up the supply chain. They're working with their, neighboring farmers to get them to grow hemp. It's really just amazing and inspiring to see what they're doing.
Yeah, they're galvanizing. I feel like their town to be able to kind of start growing more hemp. And, hemp is really only what they're telling me, like 10% of their overall operation because they have such large acreage. But like as kind of demand increases and demand is increasing, being able to kind of take on more acreage at a slow and kind of steady pace rather than just exploding and doing like 1,000 acres of hemp, I think is kind of the right approach, and being able to kind of build up that production as well too, because it does in the processing, because it does take a while to be able to kind of take on more and more hemp stock and be able to kind of create the herd that they're creating right now. And so yeah, I was really interested in kind of see that kind of slow approach, because a company like that is doing really well and a very successful business, they could be pushing out to 1,000 acres or really pushing up that production, but I like their approach of being a little bit more slow and steady. So
right. Slow and steady wins the race. So from Kansas, where'd you go?
Went to Monte Vista, Colorado, to visit Global Fiber and Formation Ag with Corbett Hefner, and was able to see kind of their Formation Ag side, which is creating equipment for hemp production and processing. Seeing some of the machines, and it's really interesting. They have a mobile mobile decorticator that they're shipping to Cornell, that they still have like in their warehouse. And so I saw at NOCO they were showing it off and being able to, has the big red logo on it, and to be able to see that machine up front in person was really interesting, and seeing different parts and what specs that they asked for, Cornell did, and seeing the different intricacies of the machinery and how it kind of fits all together. Because for me, as a person that doesn't have the engineering background to kind of understand these really complex machinery, it takes someone with that background, and Corbett has that, to be able to explain these in kind of layman's terms for me. And so I was just really blown away by that.
Cool. Did you talk to him about the blocks that they're making?
Yes. That was, I think, so far that is one of the coolest, probably the most interesting, products or end use products that I've seen. It's a structural concrete hemp block, and there is no, at least to my knowledge, there's no other hemp blocks that I've seen that has the structural capabilities. And they've been working with, was it Kansas or forgetting what? They're working with some university in the Midwest on with the kind of material science team on building this and kind of figuring out what the polymer is, but it doesn't have any lime, and it has a special mix in there that is able to top secret mix that's able to kind of bind together the herd, and it's like a hefty brick. It's not like hempcrete where it's very light and airy for insulated materials. Like this is like a heavy, dense brick. And to see that up close and personal, and hold in my hands. I know they're gonna be showing off in August at some point be able to show the kind of the masses this product. But I was blown away. And they had also like a cinder block that they showed me as well that they cut in half to see kind of what it looks like on the inside as well. So
That's cool. Yeah, that's a beautiful part of the country there. That's down in the San Luis Valley. And in Monte Vista, when we were there, sorry to just keep talking about the trip because everything you're doing reminds me and like brings me back to our trip a couple years ago. But you're traveling much lighter, right? You're not in a 30-foot RV with your wife and kids. You're just kind of like traveling in an 82 Honda Accord, I imagine.
do a 2013 Camry hybrid, so at least I get some good gas mileage. But it's definitely I've traveled already like 5,000 miles so far, mostly by myself. But
Yeah.
the second half of my trip, I have a couple of friends that are joining me for different portions, and so
Cool.
I'll be able to break up some of that driving a little bit.
Right.
So
That's cool. When we were in Monte Vista, the town of Monte Vista, where Formation Ag is, apparently it has like a mountain view, like 360-degree view of these beautiful mountains, right? Did you see those mountains?
yeah, so when Corbett took me to one of their fields that they're growing with hemp, and they have some alfalfa mixed in there as well too. It was like kind of a dramatic backdrop because you have Corbett, you have these hemp fields, and then you just have these mountains just spread out over the course of the background. And it was beautiful. But then he was like, there's another field about 30 minutes away from this that I didn't end up going to that has even more dramatic views and actually has like, I think it's like the tallest mountain in Colorado in the background, or second tallest mountain in Colorado in the background, with hemp fields that he said that these ones at kind of in the backdrop of this larger mountain has a taller hemp plants. And so
Oh, wow.
he was trying to show me those, but it's just beautiful. It's really kind of nestled into this valley, kind of surrounded by those mountains. And it creates a really dramatic view because it's incredibly flat. A lot of potato farmers and
Right.
canola farmers that are out there. And then you just have these very dramatic mountains. And also Coors has a facility for barley that they have right next to Formation Ag. And so it's really cool to see the Coors like logo and then having the mountains in the background. Like I know like with the Coors, like they have like the blue mountains background. I feel like it
Right.
was like kind of like a little bit emblematic of that. So I thought
Right.
that was a really cool juxtaposition. So
That's cool. Yeah, when we were there in the summer of 2021, the skies were just full of forest fire smoke, so we couldn't see any of the mountains. So Corbett was like, "Yeah, there's mountains all over the place," but we're like, "Yeah, sure." But no, it's.
yeah.
I would love to get back there at some point. So that kind of brings us up to present moment because you just drove up from Monte Vista to Boulder, what, yesterday or this morning or
Last night, yeah, I
last night?
did. Yeah.
Okay. That's a bit of a hike. What's that, like 4 or 5 hour drive?
Yeah, it's about four and some change. I got caught also in like lightning and heavy rain storm as I was kind of going over the mountains, and so that kind of slowed me down a little bit. But made it here safe, and so but yeah, I was started in Buena Vista yesterday. Woke up there and then drove down to Monte Vista, and then went all the way back through Buena Vista to Boulder. So a lot of driving
Back to
over the
Boulder.
last couple of days, but I'm glad to be able to kind of stay here for a little while. So
Yeah, you're taking a little break now?
yeah, I'm gonna be in Boulder until Sunday, and then embark for Montana. So
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I imagine you're going up to Fort Benton?
it's Fort Benton to see IND Hemp.
All right.
Love the guys up there, Rusty and Dalton. I'd be able to have conversations with, and so
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see their facility and be able to go talk to those people in person. So
nice. But you'll be there a little bit before the Montana Hemp Summit that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So I guess we'll just miss you there.
yes, I'm going to be there a little bit before that, and then same thing with Ken Meyer and with South Dakota. I'm going to be there a little bit before their open house that they're having as well too on I think it's early August for them,
Yeah, I think they're
and
August
so
4th. Yeah,
just August 4th, yeah. So just a little bit, just like off timing, but still being able to kind of go up and see those facilities, I think is going to be totally worth it, and something that I'm honestly really looking forward to. It's one of those stops that I've really had pinned down for a while.
yeah,
After having conversations with them over the talk with Dalton and Rusty for my exit project slash like thesis for my graduate program, and being
nice.
able to give like they gave me really great advice and just information that I can use in my kind of paper. So.
Cool. I think it's probably even better for you and your trip to get to these places before these events, because that way you get like one-on-one attention, right? Like you'll get to see everything rather than being just part of the tour or the group. So
Yeah.
that's
And
cool.
well, a lot of these places too, they've kind of really, I mean, the only place that I went to that had kind of an event going on was the E3 event. And that was still a pretty small event that I was able to engage with a lot of people at E3 and Lucas Evans and kind of talk to them about some of their facility and processing that they do. And so I really appreciate it. It's like they're kind of touring me around, bringing me around in like a pickup truck and bring me around to different fields. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there in the passenger seat with my camera, just giddy.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. Yeah. Have you had any kind of like just absolute road trip serendipity, just like things fell into place or you lucked out somehow? Any good stories from the road?
yeah, I mean, when this road trip, as much as it is about hemp, I am also visiting friends along the way. I'm very fortunate to have friends from both undergrad and grad school, and then also some friends from my hometown be able to crash on their couches and be able to hang out with them. And so there's been kind of serendipity with being able to see. I was in Austin for like last weekend, and it just so happened to be a barge. So Lake Travis, you can like rent out these like party barges or boats. And they were organizing it for Sunday. And I was going up to South Bend on Monday, and I was like, well, I can't miss this boat thing. And so it worked out well that happened on Sunday. I was able to go to and have a really great time. Um, and then, so yeah, I would say that was like for me, that was being able to spend time with some of my friends in Austin and see them, but also just going on this party barge. And there was a really beautiful sunset over Lake Travis. That's been probably one of the biggest highlights for me over the course of this trip. And
Cool.
I just tell people I seem to have really impeccable timing with, same thing with the E3 agricultural event, me being in Austin that same weekend that they were hosting that also was great timing as well too. And so I'd say like my Austin segment, everything seemed to really fall into place. And I was just incredibly happy the entire time being there, going from event to event. And just having things to do there. Because otherwise, I would just be kind of wandering around Austin and just going to parks and different restaurants. But having kind of a little bit more of a structured event, I think for me, made it a little bit better because I'm not thinking about things. I'm just like, I'm going to this event, I'm going to this event, and that's it. So,
Cool. Nice. Getting back to photovoltaics, all right, and the solar industry, I have a background in I was a solar mechanic for a couple of years back in the late aughts, right? I was an electrician, and then I got into solar installations, and I drilled a lot of holes in a lot of good roofs. You know what I mean? Like we put the panels up on like old construction houses, neighborhoods, and all that stuff. And I just think a lot about how maybe rooftop solar isn't the best way for residential solar, or maybe it should be incorporated into new construction in a different way. But then I also think about all of the like available open space in America that's not farm fields. And I'm really thinking about like highways and like the strips in between the highways. What are your thoughts on that? And like, is there any movement in that solar industry to get photovoltaic panels out in open space that isn't like ag production land?
yeah, I mean, this is something that I think about, a lot with that kind of planning background, urban planning background, thinking about how we can kind of maximize spaces and be efficient with them. And you kind of walk, you drive around anywhere and you see parking lots, you're like, these are just wide swaths of land that don't really have any solar panels, like a Walmart parking lot. I mean, you could generate a ton of energy by just throwing up a couple of solar panels on top of like as a kind of like it's like a protected layer for kind of cars.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think about like that type of open space a lot. I think highways, it would be a good idea to do that. It's just you'd have to have, if there was ever like a crash or just,
Mhm.
being able to have that kind of being able to be fixed on the highway, something that would be really interesting. But I really think that parking lots just like that open space, I think is something that we really need to kind of look into more. Because I know France actually passed a law pretty recently that said that parking lots in a couple of years or new parking lot construction, they have to actually incorporate solar panels on top of them. It's like now it's like a law in France. And so that I think for them it's because they just don't really have that much available farmland left. And in the United States we have a lot of farmland and we're kind of building a lot of these solar projects there, but it's gonna be a point where we can't really take away more farmland, and we're going to need to get more creative, whether it's through agrivoltaics or we're going to have to use neglected spaces like tops of roofs. I know there's a lot more companies now selling solar tiles, or like that you can do as like roofing, so that
Right.
you can be able to generate. So it's not like these panels that are kind of on top of a roof. You can actually have these tiles
Like
that generate
they
solar power.
are the roof.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like on roof. Yeah, it's pretty cool concept, and I think something that will hopefully get a little bit more widely adopted. But I think parking lots for me, I drive around, and when you see parking lots, this is the biggest waste of space. And people can say, oh yeah, we need to have less parking lots. They're not going to change the United States. We have to be comfortable with what we have right now. That it seems like the best opportunity to start developing projects. And I think there's a couple of companies out there, don't have it on top of my head right now, that are starting to develop projects with kind of like Walmarts and Targets and these kind of big box kind of retailers that have these enormous parking lots to
Yeah.
be able to actually have solar power that's generated on top of them. I see at some airports they have that where they have covered parking that they do have solar panels on top of that. And I find that really interesting because airport parking lots, they can be behemoths, like huge swaths of land that you just see cars there. I'm like, we could develop a project there. That's like, I don't even know how many acres on like Newark Airport that they have just like parking lots that are spreading like miles that we could be able to like take over and
Right.
put solar panels on top. That would be so much more efficient.
Because that space is already absorbing sunlight, right? Yeah, it's crazy. So that's great that you're thinking about this stuff, and I just love the hemp and solar connection for you. So, yeah,
There's so many people that talk to me that say with agrivoltaics, growing crops underneath solar panels, is there a possibility, because everyone knows I'm obsessed with hemp and I'm entering into the solar industry, can you do a dual use agrivoltaics project that has hemp that grows in between the solar panels? I have not explored that yet. I don't know if it will happen, but it'd be really cool to be able to combine the two things that I'm really most passionate about right now is, solar and hemp, be able to have them growing in the same kind of plot of land. But that might be a little bit far off, but
right.
it's cool to think about and imagine.
Yeah,
So
because if you can't imagine it, then we're never going to get there. So we have to be bold with our imagination. Yeah, I
yes,
wonder
yeah.
too.
And
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
you go. Yeah.
Well, thinking about like, you hear, hemp can be used in like nano sheet technology or batteries as like, can hemp somehow be used in the construction of the panels themselves? Like, is it silica that's in the panels, or I don't know. Could it be one of the raw materials to make the panels? I don't know.
Yeah, it could be used. I know there's that nanotechnology, and whether it's like used maybe as like a node, or I don't know where kind of within that like battery structure it could be used. But what I saw at E3 is that they have rebar, and that's made out of hemp, and it'd be really cool to see like maybe some reinforced rebar used instead of maybe steel. It can be able to kind of last a while and last like over the 30 years that projects need to be like standing for. A lot of solar projects tend to last like 30 or so years. If you can have replace some of that steel with kind of like natural materials, be really great opportunity to kind of reduce some of these projects that have like tons and tons of steel that are able to that prop up these solar panels. If you're able to replace it with something that's something that's natural, that's plant-based, I think that would be a great alternative, because these projects, they take so many natural resources and raw materials to be able to produce. It'd be great to be able to replace it with something that something that you can grow rather than something you have to extract and mine.
Right. Yeah. Like if this is one of the things I love about hemp. It's like, if we were consumers, right? It's like the American consumer culture But if the things that we're consuming could be made from plants, sourced from agriculture, it could be pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. It just seems such like a simple and beautiful idea. And I think we're getting there. Well, hopefully. I'm an optimist. So what is it for you, go deep here, why solar, why hemp? Is there something even deeper that's motivating you?
I think at the base of this, I think that I'm an environmentalist. I am a person that thinks about the world, like trying to help the world and the people that are on it. And that's kind of what's driven me, and something that my background growing up, my dad was an affordable housing developer. So I saw the side of being able to help people with safe, healthy housing over people's heads. And then growing up, and I had a teacher in fifth grade, or was it no sixth grade? Name was Miss Stroba. It was in Cheltenham. It was in EP Elkins Park Middle School in Cheltenham, where I was from, and she was inspired me to kind of think about climate change and kind of a new light, and basically disregarded the entire science curriculum that she had to teach and taught us just about climate change. And that was one of the most impactful moments in my life, because I was like, if a teacher is going to take the whole science curriculum and throw it to the side and just teach us climate change, especially in the public school system, that probably means that this is worth probably paying attention to. And the way that she taught it, with the intensity that she taught it and the passion that she taught with, I couldn't leave that class and think that I'm not an environmentalist. So that's really the foundation, helping people and helping the planet. And then as you kind of grow up, and I was in high school, I heard about hemp. I was like, oh, this plant is fantastic. Why aren't we doing more with it? And it was just kind of under research. You see something in a textbook, or maybe a book in the library about it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really great, but we haven't really touched it. And this is back in 2016, before 2018 Farm Bill kind of legalized being able to kind of produce hemp. And then solar energy, I think, was something that I was always interested in, but you just don't know how you can kind of get into that sector. And I was at Cornell in my first year, and I have a friend from Haverford from my undergrad who was working at an energy company in Houston, but he was flying up to upstate New York for developing a solar project. So he would fly into Ithaca, and then I would basically have him over for dinner. I'd be like, hey, you want to come over? I'll cook him a meal. And we would talk about this stuff. And I was like, wow, this is actually really interesting. And one day in February of my first year at Cornell, he texted me. He was like, oh, you want an internship here? And I was like, I don't want to go through the internship process of finding something. I was like, sure. And from there on, I just kind of got put into the solar industry just based on a text and a friend thinking that I'd be fit for it. But right now in the country, with the IRA that just passed, solar industry and just the renewable energy sector in general is exploding. It is not an industry that's going to be dying anytime soon, and it's hiring like crazy, and it's putting people in a position to succeed and be able to help the planet by developing these large scale projects to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And I think that was a great way to be able to kind of harness that. But I think more importantly, being at Cornell and taking these hemp classes and understanding that there was an option to take these classes, for me, was one of those floodgate moments, to kind of understand. I knew that because my degree is so flexible, that I do have the possibility to explore this. It's not like I have to take city planning classes. I can, take classes in the ag school, in the public policy school, the business school, and really build up the professional that I want to be, and not what a program. Some of these programs are very structured, what they want you to be. And I feel like I was taking ownership of my education, and I really enjoyed that. But I think the moment for the hemp that really stuck with me, having the option of taking classes there at Cornell was great. But I had a conversation with Jeff Whaling, who I love dearly. And I was really interested in hemp basically that first year at Cornell. And I took a class in the spring that was tasked with you interviewing someone in a field that you were interested about negotiations. And I saw this Jeff Whaling guy on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, this guy's pretty interesting. let me go interview him for this project. I thought it was just gonna be like an hour and 15-minute interview. It ended up being 2.5 hours long. And at that conversation, I think I took like 6 or 7 pages of notes, and I recorded the whole conversation and had to transcribe it for this paper, which was kind of a bear, but it was something that I really enjoyed because you can see these quotes kind of within it that he says in a lot of interviews, but something that really stuck with me about kind of growing the industry and kind of those pains, but also kind of hearing about his life and how he got into the hemp industry is quite fascinating. And that conversation, I think, changed my trajectory. I knew after that conversation, I want to do um, work that Jeff does on the advocacy and also on the business side to be able to grow this sector. And I knew from that point forward that, solar industry for right now is a great step for me, but at some point I'm going to go into the hemp industry because I saw the passion in his eyes and how this is a really great opportunity. I've really kind of internalized that and made it who I am and what I want to be in life and try to kind of carry that spirit with me kind of this whole road trip. So
That's awesome. Yeah. That's another thing we have in common. Jeff, also very inspiring to me too. My first interview for this podcast, even before I started publishing it, was with him. And yeah, same thing. He just invited me to his farm in Berks County, and I just got the full download. It was like a 2-3 hour conversation. And yeah, to hear how he got into it through, he's from Canada, and, the CBD aspect of it. And yeah, really inspiring. That's super cool. Getting back to hemp and solar, it's like they harmonize with each other in like a photosynthesis kind of way and like a green energy kind of way. So I think you're onto something here, Owen.
it's like a romanization, I think, of rural landscapes that I think I fell in love with being in Ithaca, and that you can go around and you can see agriculture. And I always dreamed that I would see pastoral landscapes with just hemp lining as far as I can see. But then you also have this reality of solar there as well too, that kind of dots the landscape. I feel like seeing them kind of in concert, like as I'm imagining what rural landscapes could be in the future, that really inspires me. It's not telling farmers what they can do, but showing that there are opportunities to make, money, whether it's growing hemp or also being able to lease your land for solar energy. And for a lot of farmers, what solar companies are paying on a per acre basis, for a 30-year lease, basically set up their family and their children and their grandchildren, for the rest of their life, because of just how much wealth they can generate off their land. And so I view both as kind of rural wealth opportunities for people to get engaged. And I see them as like they do kind of relate to each other, the hemp and the solar, but I really do see them as opportunities for people in these areas that have been neglected for so long in the agricultural and rural sectors, be able to generate something that not only they can take pride in, whether that's growing hemp, but also be able to make wealth and generate that for their families and for future generations.
Right. They can make a living while making a difference.
I think that's a great option to be able to provide the farmers that I think sometimes just feel really neglected. And that's been one of the main lessons that I've learned from talking to farmers over the last probably like year and over the course of this road trip, is that a lot of them just feel like they've been shunned away and haven't received the support that they should. And especially during the pandemic, growing food and be able to still be out there and doing the stuff that they keep on doing, it's really inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, I think they have the most important job of anybody, growing food, keeping people alive. And I think with, the challenges of climate change, their job becomes even more important because, like the way I see the future, like we have to get to, a just regenerative mindset in every system, right? We just have, if we're going to survive this century, we need to like retool everything. And it lies like with farmers. It comes down to agriculture. It's like nature has provided the solutions for us, and we just have to embrace it on a big scale. I'll climb off my soapbox because I'm clearly preaching to the choir here. So, all right. So you're heading to Montana soon, and then to South Dakota, and then where do you go from there?
I'm gonna go to Minneapolis. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm gonna do a stop somewhere in Minnesota. I know you have some connections there, and then I'm gonna go to Missouri, St. Louis in particular, get a visit, hopefully Tiger Fiber down in St. Louis, and then Midwest Natural Fibers as
Yep.
well too,
Cool.
with Patrick, and then I'm gonna kind of make my way to Chicago, stay with some friends there, and then gonna go to Michigan and visit a friend that works at an organic farm, not hemp related, but really cool to kind of visit him. He's a friend from abroad. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Cody Lay, but he has a nonprofit called Hemp for Humanity that I've been working with on my exit projects, like thesis for my graduate program, kind of helping him out, develop a really good connection with him. And so I'm going to meet up with him in Michigan, and we're going to go visit some hemp farm, smaller one that just kind of started planting acreage in northern Ohio. And then we're going to drive to Stephen Groff's farm in Pennsylvania.
Steve Groff here in PA, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're going to go see his operation, see the kind of regenerative ag perspective that I feel like I'm trying to see if I'm going to see those operations at some point over the course of my trip. I know that Steve Groff, like that's his specialty. And so I'm really, really excited to be able to go see that with Cody so that we can kind of, because I know Cody's trying to kind of move towards that regenerative ag, no-till kind of lifestyle with kind of his acreage.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to kind of see that in person, I think will be really impactful.
Yeah. Steve Groff is the cover crop coach. You know, he hasn't tilled his farm in like 30 years. It's amazing. You guys will love it. Can we check back in with you over the course of your journey and see, sort of check in and see what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to follow along, I am on social media. My at is Highway to Hemp.
Highway to Hemp. I love it.
And so if you ever want to follow me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, I'm going to start posting videos. And, over the course of the trip, I'm going to try to post videos, but really it's going to be over the course of the fall. I'm going to be creating kind of more long form videos about the different particular farm visits. But I'll be posting stories of where I'm at on my Instagram handle. And so if you want to follow me at Highway to Hemp, I'm more than happy to engage and talk with you guys about that there. Or if you want to email me, highwaytohemp2023@gmail.com. So
cool. Awesome. I'll put those links up on the show page for this episode, and anything else you want to send to me, I'll put there. And let me know too when you're going to be at Steve's farm, and I'll try to meet you out there if it works out timing wise.
Perfect. Yeah. I'd love to have you there.
Cool. Well, Owen Deitcher, I wish you good luck on the rest of your journey. And I'm just really excited for you. And thanks a lot for this opportunity to tell me about it.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, Eric.
All right, there you go. Owen Deitcher on the road. And you can follow along his journey, like he said, at Highway to Hemp on Instagram. Okay, so we've got a little bonus material here for you this week. You may remember a few weeks ago, I interviewed some of the folks involved with the Pennsylvania Industrial Hemp Engine. This is a public-private partnership that received $1 million grant from the National Science Foundation to jumpstart hemp innovation and supply chain development here in Pennsylvania. The launch party was held last Friday, July 7th in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. That's up in the northeastern part of the state, what we call coal country. And I think it's soon to be an industrial hemp innovation hub, thanks to this National Science Foundation grant. So I had the chance to interview a few different people, and so I'm just going to run these clips now. First, we're going to hear from the director of the National Science Foundation, the Honorable Sethuraman Panchanathan.
My name is Sethuraman Panchanathan. I'm the director of the National Science Foundation. It's a very exciting day in Hazleton because NSF is all about how do we ensure that talent and ideas are energized everywhere across our nation. And this project that we are here for to talk about is called the Regional Innovation Engine. As you know, every place has place-based innovation possibilities. Here it is, live in action, hemp-based industrial hemp that can be tremendously valuable in manifesting it in so many forms as I am seeing it. I'm seeing the hemp trump, I'm seeing hemp insulation material for houses and so on. There are so many possibilities with hemp. And the fact that you have that possibility here right here with the combination of various people coming together, whether it is academic partners like Penn State University, whether it is Emory University, whether it is the Department of Agriculture of the state, whether it is community colleges like the Luzerne County Community College or the Lackawanna Community College. I mean, you name it. I mean, all of them coming together, right? And then bringing all of their collective assets and seeing how you can take this fundamental research product into actionable things that can actually benefit the economy, make new jobs possible, make this a vibrant place. This is what NSF is all about, is how do you take all the way from fundamental research to outcomes and benefiting humanity, society, and the economy, and national security. That's what NSF is about. And I'm so glad that we're making this possible through the Regional Innovation Engines program.
Are there any other hemp-related projects that NSF is funding?
No, this is the only one that we are funding. That's the beauty of what NSF does. It picks the place, what is the most innovative thing that's happening in that place, and what might that, with the community partnerships like we talked about in different parts of our country, can make unbelievable outcomes possible in every part of our nation. And so that's what NSF is about. And so here we are in hemp-based potential that exists here in this part of the country.
Yeah, excellent. And what do you hope to learn today?
What I hope to learn is to actually meet the people who are doing the work. And I mean, when this few conversations I've already had tells me that people are so excited about what they are doing. They are innovative, and they are talking about how they are partnering with people. Whether the State Department of Agriculture, whether the universities, the partnership is what's making things possible, right? I always say that partnerships make possibilities, possibilities make progress, progress makes prosperity.
So what was cool about this launch party is that they had a bunch of representatives from the Pennsylvania hemp industry, sort of set up kind of like expo style, people who make products from hemp. There was Cameron McIntosh from Amerishon Hemp with his hemp building stuff. Sean House, the hemp pretzel guy, was there. Steve Groff was there. And there was a guy named Sean.
Sean Andres. Today I'm showcasing my business, Taproot Drums. We make drums from HempWood, which is a hemp composite material from Kentucky. We make snare drums, practice pads, all types of percussion equipment. Yeah, they're right now they're direct for sale on my website. I've gotten interest from some retailers as well. It's a very new company though, so I believe these are the first of their kind. So I'm excited to see what the demand is like. With the snare drums, the shells specifically are what the hemp is going for. The hardware, regular hardware, is just the same as any other drum. Honestly, very standard snare drums that you would use for drum sets you would see at any jazz club or like rock venue. Anytime you go out to see a show, these drums would fit right in. Yeah, so the first time I saw the lumber material, it was really amazing to me because hemp doesn't grow to be like trees. You can't cut it down and just like have lumber the same way that we process trees. So I get it from a company who already takes the hemp stalks and processes it into lumber. Once I get that big, large piece of lumber, I will cut that down into smaller pieces and then glue that into round. And then I'll suspend that over a router bit and then round that out to be nice and smooth.
I also had the chance to talk to U.S. Congressman Matt Cartwright. And apologies on some of the sound quality here. My new mic is awesome, but when you're in a room of 150 people talking, even the greatest microphone in the world is going to have some difficulty.
I'm Congressman Matt Cartwright. I'm a U.S. representative for the Pennsylvania 8th Congressional District, PA 08. As a general matter, I'm interested in science. I just finished a term as the chairman of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee of Appropriations. All of the appropriations in Washington originate in the subcommittees of appropriations in the House. And so it's my job to know where American investments are going in the Commerce Department, the Justice Department, and all of the sciences, including the National Science Foundation, whose director is here today, and the entire space program. So I work very hard at keeping up to speed and also, frankly, looking at ways Pennsylvania can benefit from advances. Pennsylvania can benefit by being a hub of hemp development and research, and all of the world can benefit from the use of hemp. There's so many variegated uses for hemp. In building materials, hemp is 10 times stronger than cotton. It stores something like 4 times the amount of carbon as other grown materials. It has so many uses because of those properties. Originally it was used to sail ships. That's what they made rope out of. I mentioned here today that the Declaration of Independence was written on paper manufactured from hemp. How appropriate, since just a few days ago we celebrated the authoring of the Declaration of Independence.
It's probably hemp grown in Pennsylvania, right?
Probably, that's right. And so this is really a return to our roots on some level in Pennsylvania, because hemp got a bad name. It got associated with marijuana. Hemp is not marijuana. Hemp is not illegal, and we're not talking about doing anything with hemp that would possibly be illegal. The other thing about hemp is it grows really quickly and it matures very quickly. It takes so long to grow a tree to the size where you can use it in construction material. Hemp, you can do that in 5 years. And it's something that we did in the past in Pennsylvania. It has a bright future, not only in Pennsylvania, but in the whole world. Everything you make out of plastic, you could also make from hemp. And weaning ourselves off plastic in this world is kind of a priority.
Looking ahead to the future jobs in Pennsylvania, how could the hemp engine develop a workforce here?
It's what everybody in this building is concerned about, is the economy. And the economy means jobs, more jobs, and better paying jobs. That's what I'm interested in. And that's something that hemp can have a lot of influence on. It can be in just a matter of a few years, hemp could grow to be a $46 billion a year industry. And if you think about the kinds of jobs, it's really two ends to it. It's the growing of hemp, so there's a lot of agricultural jobs, and there's a lot of manufacturing jobs that flow from the use of hemp in construction materials. And of course, all along the route, transportation jobs as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Eric.
Yep, thanks.
So one of the cool things for me about this launch party was, people talking about hemp. Yeah, that happens a lot. I've been covering this industry for 5, almost 6 years, and there's always people talking about hemp. When I first started covering it, it was a small group of people, and then it grew a little bit larger. And now look, it's getting bigger, right? The head of the National Science Foundation is talking about hemp. A U.S. congressman is talking about hemp. So that to me is encouraging, right? One of those people who was talking about hemp a few years ago was Pennsylvania State Senator Judy Schwank, and she was at the launch party too.
My name is State Senator Judy Schwank, and I am Minority Chair of the Senate Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, and I serve the 11th District, which is, I like to call it, the heart of Berks County.
Like they said in the intro there, you sort of spearheaded this in the state a few years ago. So what's it like now, looking at the progress that's been made?
I am very excited. I mean, this is a significant investment, and these are partners that have, some quality, and they're institutions that have some standing behind them. So I'm very excited to see this happen. I've felt like, since we've introduced the legislation, it's been ups and downs, of course. So many things happening in the industry, but essentially we've been kind of treading water. And it seems like for Pennsylvania, based on what I'm hearing today, it is the physical qualities of the hemp that we're really going to start taking advantage of. So I'm anxious to see where this goes from here, and interested in learning how they'll report out to people, because not only do they have to do the work they're doing, we have to convince farmers, as we've heard a few of the speakers say, that this is something that would be worth them investing in.
I think we need to convince consumers that their products need to be
That's the other part of the triangle. They will. And I know that there's consumer interest, But frankly, you haven't heard as much about it as you had, in the beginning years when we started really talking about hemp in the Commonwealth. So I think this is a real shot in the arm that will help us to get this industry going again.
Good. Are you working on any other hemp legislation these days?
Well, I still have a bill in to use hemp for animal feed, and I understand that they just passed that in New York State. So I'd like to see that happen here, and I think I need to get on the phone with Secretary Redding and talk to him about how we help to make this happen.
And lo and behold, there he was.
Yeah, Russell Redding, Secretary of Agriculture of Pennsylvania. So we are on this journey and have been for the last number of years with hemp and trying to make sure that we're doing the right things at the state and trying to discover all of these different partnerships and people with ideas about what hemp in America looks like and hemp in Pennsylvania. So today we're here. The National Science Foundation has funded a project in Pennsylvania with Vital and looking at this engine, as they term them. Right term, right? Because it brings all of those pieces together. So here to celebrate that, engage with the folks, and I think look around a little bit as well, just to understand who is it that's in this business, who wants to be in it, but also where can we as a state, as the Department of Agriculture, and the governor can be helpful.
Excellent. So your department seems very committed to the development of the industry, maybe more so than other states. Where do you see Pennsylvania fitting into the sort of the national hemp industry?
Well, we are as committed today as we were when the first conversation started in 2014 about sort of the state's role, right? And we had both the state legislature at the time and the former governor involved. We had Congress sort of thinking about what they wanted to do in the Farm Bill. But I think almost 10 years on, to me, the journey has been fascinating at multiple levels, particularly around the challenge of building the infrastructure, both physical and intellectual, and what was lost for 80 years that the prohibition was in place. And it's been really fascinating to me how much work it takes to reestablish that, how much money it takes to reestablish that, how much work to engage the public in what hemp is and isn't, but also this discovery of what you can do with it, and making sure that at the end of the day, for me in the Department of Ag, is it's still about the fundamentals of food, fiber, feed. It's got to work at that level. Everything else we see and talk about is driven off of that raw material. So we want to make sure that remains.
Have you had conversations with Governor Shapiro about industrial hemp?
Yeah, we have. Early conversations about where potential is, what we should be advocating for, and this was both a Farm Bill discussion, federal Farm Bill discussion. It's making sure that we're advocating with particularly our PA delegation and the chairman of the House Ag Committee, Chairman Thompson, who's the first chair from Pennsylvania since the Civil War. Right, so he was around when hemp was a big deal. He wasn't, but the Pennsylvania's role. So we're involved and engaged in that, and so the discussion with the governor has been two things. One, we've got to continue to do what we're doing, the specialty crops and research and the regulatory structure, and we have to invest. Ultimately, you have to have investment to do this. We'll hear that today. And then we think Congress has to finish their work. And the finishing the work means you need to bifurcate the hemp issue, right, to focus in on the agronomic side of that for agriculture. There's a lot of other people who want to do things with the product or a derivative of.
Cannabinoids.
Good for them, right? But that's not where we started the conversation, nor do we believe that the Farm Bill interests in Congress ever wanted to. So we're going to keep advocating on that. So he's been involved.
He gets it?
He gets it completely, and gets it that it's both an agricultural opportunity, it's a manufacturing opportunity. We've got all of the right conditions in the state. And the convergence of people and things that's going to take, we believe, to make this industry work, right? It's academic pieces, it's investment, it's markets, it's land. They're all the basic elements. He gets it.
Yeah, good. And what will you be telling the audience today?
I think for this group particularly is a little bit of the journey, right? That we arrive here thinking this is the only thing that's happened. There's been an application, they've been successful, and it's but the backstory of how did we get here a little bit. I think giving credit to those who have stuck with us from the very beginning. Right? There are folks who were at the table nearly 10 years ago who are helping to advocate. Some of those are still here, and they're more significantly invested than they've been. I want to talk about that a little bit. But also just from hemp, from an agricultural standpoint, is that we believe it has great potential. But to do that and to have that realized is going to take a lot of people with a well-orchestrated and choreographed ecosystem, if you will. That's what the engine does, right? We've got parts of those to the engine over time, but we haven't had the engine. And today, I think with the engine, with the National Science Foundation, is just what we need to keep that spark going.
All right, so a couple of things here. So notice that Secretary Redding used the word bifurcate. That means to split into two, and that's exactly what needs to happen here. You know I'm right. We need to have industrial hemp over here, and we need cannabinoid hemp over there, right? Split them. Regulate them differently. That's what needs to happen. Because remember, what we're after here is industrial hemp, the fiber herd, the grain. We want that to be big, boring, and ubiquitous, right? Yeah, it has the potential to be the engine of industry. Agriculture can supply most of our raw materials for everything we need. But am I preaching to the choir? I don't know. The other thing is this idea of, supporting your local hemp industry. So yes, we are advocates for a national hemp industry, a worldwide hemp industry, but what hemp sort of necessitates here is smaller, regional, strong supply chains, right? So if you support the national hemp industry, then you need to support your local hemp industry. And that's why this celebration here in Pennsylvania was, meaningful to me, because I've been paying attention for a few years now. And like I said before, it's growing, and it's growing. I am really proud of my home state of Pennsylvania. It's just been a really neat journey to get to know the people and the industry. So anyway, that's it for me today. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Be sure to get a subscription to our print edition because it'll change your life. It's amazing. It's that good. All right, if you have any questions or concerns or comments, or you just want to say hey to me, please do. You can send an email. You can send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. You can always call me up and leave me a message too. I love to hear people's voices. I love to hear your stories. You can call 717-721-4462. So call me up. Leave me a message. All right, so that does it for me today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, and then I'm going to Montana in a couple of weeks, so I assume we'll be reporting from Montana soon. All right, so until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 3, Episode 25 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. And the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.